Good evening, everyone. With the time being 5:55 p.m. on Wednesday, March 15th, 2023, I will call this meeting of the Webster School Committee to order and ask that we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the first item on the agenda is an interview for the superintendent finalists. Our first interview will be Dr. Carrie Allen, and she'll be joining us in just a couple moments. Good evening again, Dr. Allen. Nice to see you. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, thanks.
The room is set up a little bit differently here. So as you probably expected, we have a lot of questions for you once again, another 15 questions. So, we'll want to budget our time accordingly. We budgeted an hour and 15 minutes for this interview with the hope that we'll get through the Q&A portion in 60 minutes, and that will allow 15 minutes if you have any questions for the committee. Does that sound okay? Any questions before we get started?
No.
Okay, all right, great. Well, let's see here. The first question that we have for you, Dr. Allen, is why did you choose to apply for the superintendent position here in Webster?
So I feel that it's a little serendipitous that you're only 25 minutes down the road for me because of the match. I'm walking into this with a good amount of experience. I've been a leader for over 20 years in 5 different schools. The schools varied significantly in terms of sizes and populations. In most of those schools, I've created or co-created district-wide programs that service children of varying needs, children with autism. We created a learning disabilities program that was an exemplar for our district. I currently have a program in my school for children that struggle in the social emotional domain. So I bring a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge to the kids here. I'm currently a turnaround principal, and so I understand the status of the district, and that work is unique work, and so I understand the effort and the tears and the exhaustion of it. And it is unique. It requires a different type of leader, which I think I am. And so I can bring that to the kids here too. I've done a lot of research on Webster. It's been a second job preparing. I was able to meet with the focus groups when I came, and I met people whose children are currently in the schools, and that said a lot for me. And I could see the value that the community places on the schools, and so it's a place I would like to work. I think I've said prior that I studied at Boston College, where I got received my master's and my doctorate, and we sort of learn under an ethical belief system about extending ourselves outward and advocating for as many students as possible. And I prided myself on that throughout my entire career. And I'd like to bring my skills to the kids here. Sure.
Hi, Dr. Allen.
Hi, how are you? Good, thanks. I'm not that good. I'm a little nervous.
Okay.
It sounds like the right thing to say. Yeah.
So could you describe the role of the superintendent as it relates to the development of district and school culture?
The role of the superintendent is to create a culture of success, a culture of positive momentum. The way to do that is to gather, collect, cultivate large groups of people, teams, that can sort of rally around a concept of kids and to sort of think not about themselves, but about the greater good. So as the superintendent, to promote and put all my resources, my energy towards creating that culture. And that means making it a great place for people to want to work, to want to come and to stay. um, to be able to take risks, create a culture where mistakes are okay as long as we fix them, a culture where there's a commitment and not just sort of a culture of compliance where people are just nodding. There has to be a genuine buy-in in the belief that it can be done. And I do that through modeling and all my energy and effort to creating that culture.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
How would you implement culturally proficient curricula across all subgroups?
So culturally proficient curriculum, so materials that we use, strategies to implement that curriculum, ensuring that all that we do sort of honors and validates and celebrates cultures other than the most dominant. For me, to create a district of cultural proficiency is beyond just the curriculum. It's sort of like a belief system, a genuine understanding or a care about the kids and their families and what they bring to the table, their experiences, their backgrounds. Not knowing their experiences, their backgrounds, brings about a good amount of misunderstandings. And we will lack relevancy in what we're trying to teach. There's studies, there's research that shows the lack of knowledge of our families and our students, it'll cause the achievement gap, it'll expand it. So it's essential that we have a good understanding of what our kids and families bring to the table, and all we do has to be relevant to their experience. For me, I knew I would have to spend a lot of time getting to know the kids and the families, because obviously there's a gap, an achievement gap that we're concerned about. Digging through data, looking to see what's causing that gap, making sure that the programs and materials that we're using are relevant to the kids, students. And I'm a fan of professional development. I think the idea that we walk into every situation with our own experiences and our own backgrounds, and we bring in that to the table, and we have to be aware of what we're bringing as well, that's not negatively impacting teaching and learning. It's okay, it's all right.
Dr. Allen, can you describe 3 indicators that you're going to use as a superintendent to determine the degree to which you're being successful in this role?
3 indicators of success. Performance data, for sure. Student achievement.
Okay.
And not just one instrument to measure that. So progress to be made by all subgroups utilizing different forms of assessment. I think an indicator of success would be the momentum brought to the district, the passion to the district, measured by input from all stakeholders. And the last indicator to be my chance to reflect and to provide that reflection of how I'm doing.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi.
How have you built lines of communication with the various district stakeholders, such as your leadership team, the faculty, community leaders, and businesses and families in the community?
It's a big part of the turnaround process, communication, and working alongside community. So I'll start there. We've had ebbs and tides of that. COVID obviously brought a little bit of a dent into things. We have worked with all colleges, Worcester State, Holy Cross, Clark University, Simmons College to the New England Center for Children, to bring student teachers and observers into our school, and we benefit from that relationship because we're provided professional development, and I've been a part of research there. So frequent discussions and meetings and attending discussions with the student teachers and their mentors. We have reached out to nonprofit organizations to try to create an awareness of our community of what our students are about and ensuring that our students are contributing back to that community. Farm to table, environmental issues, pollution. We have varying programs and enrichment programs that are doing that. We created a team, it's called a Targeted Network Team as part of the turnaround. That team consists of myself, the assistant principal, school adjustment counselor, school nurse. The primary goal of that team is to link students and their families to agencies to assist them in food issues, housing, medical needs, everything in order to support our families. And we meet once a week, and we make the connections through that. My leadership team, I meet every day. I have an instructional leadership team that we meet once a week. It's a representation of every grade level in our school, as well as specialists, so in terms of special education and ESL teachers. We meet bi-weekly. We do book studies. And as I said, I meet with my leadership team like every minute of every day. District-wide, we have a network of principals that we meet together twice a month to share ideas. We do walkthroughs of each other's schools and share strategies.
Back to me. This is a two-part question, so I'm going to ask them both at the same time, but then I'll repeat the second part, if just so that you know what I'm throwing at you. How would you foster meaningful, productive, and supportive relationships between staff, families, and students? That's part one. And then the second part of that is, what are the supports that you will develop and implement to make families an equal and informed partner with staff? So did you want me to repeat the first part again?
Sure,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I thought I was going to have paper here, so I'm going to have paper. That's okay.
How would you foster meaningful, productive, and supportive relationships between staff and families and students?
And then the second part.
Is what are the supports that you will develop and implement to make families an equal and informed partner with staff?
So there's sort of a two-prong approach. Schools communicating and engaging families directly, and then the district's role in doing that directly too, and supporting schools to create meaningful relationships with the families. So when I visited, so there's evidence of that here. We could see that. So I saw examples of schools being proactive, not reactive, responsive. We talked at one, I'm not sure which principal, about breaking down barriers, language barriers in all communication, ensuring that we were aware of obstacles that families were facing, so that is everywhere. So what are the obstacles that we can connect with families? Not just the families' obstacles, but ours too. And how do we create those links? There are two areas that I have found great success with, and I'm going to steal a little bit from the conversations that I've had here too. One is, I have found in the past that the greatest relations that we established with families was through the major transitions that families experienced during their careers in our schools. What I mean by that is catching families at times where they would probably need the most amount of support. So transitions would be new families coming into our pre-K and our K, making sure that we are having not just open houses, but really providing them a good amount of information during those screening sessions. Transitions between elementary to middle, transitions from middle to high school, and transitions from high school to secondary. And Ryan Collins talked, I'm stealing a little bit of his momentum that he has. He had talked about a new initiative that he's been doing, that conferencing with students, and I believe their families, to so that they understand about the transition to high school course selection and the pathways. I think also transitions into the school system as a whole. We've done a lot of work with that in my school. So we utilize our wraparound coordinator, and I spoke to your family liaison about that role. New families come in, and we don't just sort of push them towards the school. It should be a process of gaining information about where those families were, the historical context, the supports that student had, bringing them to the school, touring the school, meeting the principal, as much information as possible. That's meaningful. That's understanding. That's breaking down obstacles. So successful transitions and taking advantages of those moments. The second, as important, is taking every opportunity to ensure that families know where their children stand, academically as well as in the social emotional. Report card conferences, great, that's great. Having interpreters translate, that's wonderful. IEP meetings, making sure that we're taking our time through those meetings, that families are not being run over, that we're not using a lot of jargon that Dr. Allen doesn't understand, so I'm sure that we're confusing people. Being aware of that during IEP 504 meetings. SSP process, you have it here, making sure that that process is clear and concise and crisp, and that it has follow-up with families, so again, that they are a part of the process. So a lot of systems in place between the school and the families, and then my role is to support, mentor, guide, and I'd like to be a part of a lot of those pieces too, without being.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
What concrete steps would you take to bring us out of turnaround status? And how will you measure and report on the progress to stakeholders?
Okay. So this is a favorite topic of mine because I've been doing the work for 6 years. We've been doing the work for 6 years. The turnaround itself is guided by 4 practices. And under the 4 practices, there are a series of indicators, a lot of them. And those indicators guide activities and systems and programs and to help address those practices. The indicators are linked to a series of rubrics, and those rubrics are on a continuum. They go from if activities or initiatives are not fully implemented, there's no evidence of success, that it's making a difference in child achievement, all the way up to sustaining improvement or further, full implementation. So it's a very guided process, and it's a very thorough process. It's an exhausting process, and it has a lot of bumps in the road, but it works. It works. So some of the initiatives, some of the ideas through that. First turnaround practice is all about leadership and shared leadership. Getting capable, qualified leaders in the right places. And I know here that you're here. You're there with that. But those leaders have to understand school improvement. And school improvement means knowing how to collect data, how to analyze it, how to leverage your resources, how to strategize, how to use systems of supervision and evaluation. It's big, it's important, and it's unique. Second practice is all about quality instruction, not just about buying programs, but that teachers know their frameworks, that they know how to teach, and that they're provided the support and the professional development to do that. Third practice, it's student supports. That's where you're starting to talk about your models for your children of special needs, as well as your second language learners, your multi-language learners. Models that work. You're talking about people, you're talking about resources. and the teachers who are responsible for teaching those students, they're experts in their field. And so they really need to know specialized instruction. They need to know WIDA can-do standards. They have to be supported through intensive professional development. And the last is district and school-wide culture. Creating a culture of safe, secure schools, welcoming schools, family involvement. It all works. It all comes together. If I could just throw some data out at you, because I've done the work and we've done the work, and I've seen it from the beginning at its most complicated. And I'm able to come here today because we're at the point now at our school where we're in full implementation. Some of our successes. 2016, I was appointed as a turnaround principal. First year data reading from the benchmark assessment system, 2017 in the fall, 75% of our 6th, 5th, and 4th graders read on the kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade level. In mid-year outcomes, prior to closure, right before we closed, that was down to 25% of our students. When we started the turnaround, we had a chronic absentee rate of almost 16%. By the time, just right before closure, we got it down to just over 5%. We decreased suspensions, we decreased the amount of infractions, disciplinary infractions, and we increased kid engagement through quality instruction, a lot of professional development. So I've seen the turnaround process, I know how it works, I can see the success of it, and I understand thoroughly.
Me again. Okay. How would you ensure the district is providing adequate instruction, support, and intervention to our students and members of subgroups who fail to meet the learning standards?
Sure, so that directly relates to the third turnaround practice. We just had a discussion today, actually, with the grade 5 team. And we all recognize the concept that classroom teachers cannot conquer this alone. That students that are in the greatest need, children with special needs, second language learners, multi-language learners, require more. Recognizing that when we first started the turnaround, that those two subgroups, all the data, triangulation data showed the deficits, the difficulty. First step that we did was, you have to dig into the data. You have to look at grade level, content, skills. You have to really be able to analyze and to look for patterns, trends of what's going on, student specific as well as grade level specific, content specific, whatever it might be. From there, we have to look at the models of learning. Models include materials, schedules. It seems underrated. We found students being pulled during math for reading, pulled for reading during math blocks. We were a little all over the place. So strategic scheduling, knowing where students are supposed to be, literally following students around for the day through their schedule to understand where they're going with who. So you're talking about, again, materials, schedules. I want to emphasize teachers, educators who are working with children with special needs and multi-language learners. There is a belief, there's an understanding that they are in those roles because they have something that the rest of us don't. They have certifications, they have professional development. They know, again, about how to assess accurately. They know how to read those assessments. And so we have to make sure that, again, we have the right people in the right places. And to support them, continuous professional development, continuous dialogue and discussion. With that, the final part is a system of progress monitoring. We need systems to ensure that what we're doing is working and that we always have the leverage to adjust as needed based on the educators themselves, the building principals, all stakeholders to be able to tweak what we need to.
What is the role and value of assessment instruments in today's schools?
Role and value. So not a question that qual- quality assessments are crucial. Authentic, timely, reliable, valid assessments. They're essential. Teachers need them to guide instruction. Families need to understand the outcomes so that they understand to make informed decisions. Funding can be attached to the outcomes. They're essential in that area. And students need them. Students need to know how to monitor how they're meeting goals and objectives. So so it's essential, it's crucial. The complexity in some of that is that we are seeking to assess and evaluate kids, adults, kids, human beings, and they are very complex and they develop and they change. And so it's difficult to, it can be very difficult to gain an understanding of where they are because they change so frequently. My greatest, I don't want to say concern, high stakes testing, grander assessments that are furthest removed from the classrooms don't always accurately provide us the information that we need of how children are making progress. I think the state is starting to pick up on that, and there's a lot of discussion and dialogue with that. So we're trying to figure out how do you define students' outcomes, how are they performing other than state test, portfolios, their contributions to their community volunteerism. There is more to a child than a short selected response question on an M. Colleges are picking up on this too. They're test optional. So I think we have to be a little bit forward thinking in the assessments that we're utilizing and how we are evaluating student progress. So there's a place, it's essential as long as they're reliable and valid.
Okay. Describe your ability to cultivate a disciplined and safe school environment.
So again, huge part of the turnaround. So teaching and learning cannot occur in an environment that is where expectations are not clear for the adults and for the children. I can tell you about my experience of how what we've done. When we started the turnaround, I gave some data about some of the complicated scenarios that we were facing. The first thing that we did is we created matrices that defined expectations for student and adult behavior in different environments in the school. That was 6 years ago. We continue to use that matrix. And I believe I saw evidence of that in one of the schools as well. That was created by the staff themselves. We live by that matrix, what the expectation is at arrival, dismiss everywhere we go. We practice that after vacations. I say, for the day, go down to the cafeteria, let's practice everything. At the start of every school year, when teachers, before the students start, we all practice as a faculty, 60 of us. We walk around the building and we role play the expectations. So, and that can be annoying to some staff who've been doing it for 6 years. But we're so consistent that there is no question at all about the expectations. We created core values. Core values are essential. The staff embarked on that activity 2 years into the turnaround. It took us a couple of years to figure out what we did believe, but we create those core values. We celebrate them. They are just not a visual on a wall. We live those core values in all that we do. We celebrate them when we see them, and when we don't, we use those specifics to try to guide ourselves and guide students as to how we can improve. We have school-wide systems, and I saw them here again in your schools of PBIS, positive behavior systems throughout your schools, again, very intact. We shift as we need to, and we reinforce when we need to, but as a result of that quality work, and I know that I saw that in evidence in your schools, the environment it becomes a very secure, safe learning environment where there's minimal interruptions into the day.
My turn. Sorry.
That's okay.
How would you use student performance data to prioritize use of resources, including money, technology, resources, and human capital?
I'm not sure if everybody will agree with this response, but there, to me, needs to be an equity concept, an equity formula to deciding resources. This was a hot topic, by the way, when I met with teachers in the varying focus groups. Everybody wanted to know, how are you going to prioritize? It's mostly staffing. I don't believe that everything that's equal is equitable, if that's the right way to say it. So every class, to me, should not have the same thing. Every grade level, every school, it has to be based on the needs. I'll give you one small example of that. I know in your schools you have instructional coaches. We have instructional coaches as well. The way that we decide how many instructional coaches, to me, should not be based on, well, everybody gets the exact same. Instructional coaches can be allocated based on how many new teachers do you have? How many teachers have been teaching for under 5 years? Because that's what instructional coaches are for, to coach teachers. So where there are more new teachers, more teachers that are in need, that's where you would leverage your resources. So there's a lot of examples of that, but to me, it's based on an equity formula, not on an equal.
Describe your philosophy surrounding the evaluation of direct reports and how you would mentor, guide, and support underperforming staff and inspire others to perform at a higher than current level.
I worked on a couple of tools in this area. So years ago, I was on a committee with DESE where we created a guidebook for inclusive practices. That guidebook now is used throughout the Commonwealth. It provides tools for leaders to guide them through the process, the supervision and evaluation process. I'm currently on a committee in our district right now where we're creating a guidebook for principals to not just go through, to clarify the forms, the varying forms that we use and the timelines, but also to look fors for effective observations and to provide resources to guide principals. Obviously, we have an evaluation system. We have goals and objectives and systems of monitoring our success, formative assessments, summative evaluations. But at the heart of that evaluation system is the concept of reflection. So the first part that we do is a self-assessment. So it's a reflection of our own practice and our strengths and our weaknesses and where we want to improve. And so that says a lot because to me, the process of evaluation, it has to be reflective. And it also has to be about more than one event or one data point. There has to be an understanding of growth, support. In my experiences, we've sort of followed almost like a tiered approach to support teachers, depending on where their level of need and expertise is. New teachers require more support, more guidance. There's always a lot of tiers, so they always need that. And so how we support teachers that are in varying performance levels varies. And that's what it's supposed to be. It's not meant to be a gotcha kind of system. It's meant to be a growth model. And I've always have gone that route. I do want to say, though, that proficiency and higher is the goal. Because that's what our kids need, our students need. the best in front of them. They deserve the best to be in front of them. And so I'm all for growth, and I work with teachers, I work with everybody all day, and tailor their level of needs and support. But there is a timeline that we have to reach. And I've reached that timeline with people in the past. I've had complicated conversations with people. It's difficult, very difficult. But that's what I'm here for. That's part of the role. And I would say I'm comfortable with that part of it. I don't like it, but I can do that.
Slacking. How would you address turnover at the building administrator level?
That was another hot topic during the focus groups when I came. That was actually one of the questions that one of the staff members asked me. What's your experience of working in high turnover? And I had explained to them that I've been very lucky in my career. I have longevity. Where I have been, I've stayed, and I've only transitioned when I sought to transition, or in the case of my current setting, I was appointed, I was asked to move there. And I've been lucky enough that I've worked with quality assistant principals that took over for me. And so we didn't miss a beat when well, they probably missed me but I like to say everything fell apart, but it never does. So I've been very lucky with that. But I walked into a setting in 2016 where I saw the impact of high turnover in leadership positions as well as in school staff. I saw what it did. I saw the inconsistency that it caused. I saw the concern among the faculty, the unsureness, the lack of confidence. And so I saw what it can do. And to be honest with you, that was my hesitancy to leave for a while, because I wanted to make sure that didn't happen at Goddard. To address that, the first, as I said prior, is that we have to recruit the most qualified, capable leaders. It's very difficult work. It's not for everybody. And so sort of just walking into the role will never do it. We really need the most qualified. I believe that you have that here. Once we have those qualified leaders, for me as a superintendent, I'm going by my experience. In my career, I've worked with two amazing superintendents, Dr. Caradonio and Maureen Benenda. And they kept me going they always had confidence in me, and told me that they had confidence. And that's what I'd want to ensure that I do for the principals, is that to tell them that I have the confidence, and to allow a level of risk-taking, and also like a level of autonomy and discretion, because capable leaders know what to do. And so you have to allow them to do it. My superintendents were always accessible. Anytime I called, they picked up the phone, and that's the superintendent that I want to be. That's how we keep quality folks in our district. I want to be present with them and sit alongside them to figure out how to move our schools forward. Every time that I had an issue or a concern or I made a mistake, I was never fearful to tell them that. I was always okay, because I knew it would be confidential, and I knew that I could trust them and that they could trust me. But every time I picked up the phone and I said, I've got a problem here, the first thing that they always said was, what can I do to help? It was never, this is what you need to do, this is what you have to do. It was, what do you need from me to help you? And it worked, and it works. Establishing that culture for leaders will will attract the best and it will retain the best, for sure. One last piece, too. They've always insisted that there was a balance between work and play, because it's such a high burnout position that if we're not encouraging that fun, it's a mistake. It'll be a mistake.
Me.
Who are you accountable to, and how will you hold yourself and others accountable for follow-through and outcomes?
Who am I accountable to? I think the correct answer right now would be to say to the school committee. That might be the right answer, obviously. In no particular order. School committee, obviously. The community. Community's providing us resources. They're investing in us. They know that we need to thrive for them to thrive. So I'm accountable. I'm accountable to the families. I think there's a misunderstanding or a myth that families in high needs areas or districts or whatever, no understanding. Or what happens, I have found, is that families place a lot of faith that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And so I'm accountable to them, that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, that we're doing. I'm accountable to the kids, to the students. 5-year-olds can't advocate for themselves. Well, some can. I have some that can. But I'm their number one ally. We're their number one ally. So I'm accountable to them. I'm accountable to my family and friends because they brought me here. They brought me to this spot, and they're counting on me to do well. So I'm accountable to them. And I'm accountable to myself. I am never the type of person that is not aware of how my position, my approach, my presence can either be a positive momentum in a situation or not. And I'm a very reflective, aware person. I'm very honest with myself, and so I hold myself accountable. I'm not an excuse maker. I never have been, and that's important to me. How do I hold others accountable? We have systems of supervision and evaluation, the formality of that. I would always go with the belief system that what's being asked of people, everybody walks into school life wanting to do the right thing. There is nobody that walks in that says, I'm going to come in and ruin everybody's day. And so I believe that when something is not occurring that we would like for it to happen, I question the lack of clarity maybe of my communication and their misunderstanding. So I would rather repeat myself and go back to it numerous times to make sure that there is an understanding, and to ensure that there's follow-up and follow-through for the requests or whatever we want to get done. And I find that works all the time. It's very seldom that it doesn't. So formal systems and informal of constant communication and dialogue, and clarity.
Dr. Allen, you're cruising through these questions.
Am I?
You are.
It doesn't feel like it.
No, it's only been 2 days.
Is that, it's yeah.
So we're nearing the end of
We
our
are?
time here. Yep.
It's-
So just in closing, we all would like to hear from you if there's anything coming into this evening that you were hoping to get the chance to talk about that we haven't covered yet.
So when I had my first interview, I cried at the end. And then I cried with one of the focus groups, too. I want to tell a quick story. I have a friend, one of my great friends here tonight, Debbie Mitchell, who knows this story. I was telling my assistant principal about it. We were talking about it today. At the beginning of the turnaround, we were about 2 weeks into the turnaround. And it was just, it was difficult. And I had 4 events that happened in this one day. So the first event was I was counseling a student, like a 5th or 6th grade student, and who got removed from class. And I was trying to talk her through, it's really important, learning. You don't want to, she was very serious about it. She really, was very serious. And I got called away because it was very chaotic. So I was away for about 15 minutes. I came back and she was eating a McFlurry. She'd left the school and went to McDonald's without me knowing. Came back and was eating McFlurry. So I just realized that my strategy of counseling wasn't so great. And then I had to leave that situation. I went into a meeting with a 6th grade student who was struggling significantly. We had the mother in. His behaviors were warranting removal from the school. We were going over his IEP that he had been on since kindergarten. And the goals and objectives of the IEP were the exact same in 6th grade that they were in kindergarten. Letter identification, letter sound, CBC, blending, segmenting. And trying to explain this, and then we're explaining to the mother about the really inappropriate things that he was saying to the teachers. And the mother was very emotional. And I was trying to model for the staff, how to be an ally. So I was using my best 7th grade Spanish with the parent. I was saying things like, yo soy la directora, and my whole staff was looking, rolling their eyes, thinking this is the best that we could get here. And I left that meeting, and I was going through the hallway, and I was telling everybody the lights in the school, it was so dark. And I looked up, and I saw the custodian. I said, why is it so dark? What's going on with the lights? All the bulbs are out. And I said, let's call downtown. Let's get them. He said, no, we have the bulbs. I said, you have the bulbs? He said, yeah. I said, let's change them. He said, well, I have to get the big ladder out. So we don't wait till all the lights are out. Let's go get the big ladder, and I'll help you. He said, no, you don't have to help me. And I said, no, I can help you. And so he said, no. And I said, well, while you're up there, take the rag so you can dust while you're up there. And then I left, and I went and worked on the grant, which we applied for. It's a turnaround grant of $365,000 that we wrote, and we received that grant for 2 years. And I worked after school from 4 to 9 with the grant writers, and that was just not that night. It was constant. And I came home, and I was telling my friend Debbie about the day, and her response was, Terry, that's what I love about you. Everything with you is important. You are passionate about everything. There's nothing that you want to slip by. And I remember that, and that's the passion I want to bring here. That's what I want to do here. So
Thank you. That sounds like quite a day.
Yeah, it was almost like today, too.
Yeah. This one's almost over.
Yeah. That'll be good.
Anything else on your mind?
No, I just want to I thank you for the opportunity. I don't want to say I've enjoyed the process, because it's been long. But I feel I was very welcomed into your schools. I was very comfortable. Everything was very organized. So I'm really thankful. I feel the process was very fair, and I'm really thankful to be a part of that. I hope to return.
Thank you.
So-
Well, we're really thankful for your interest, so
Yeah,
thank you, and we will be in touch with you.
that's great. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you.
I'm going to bring
Your entourage?
my crew with me, if that's okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks so much.
Good evening once again, everyone. We're back with our next interview. Good evening, Mrs. Perangeli.
Good evening, Mrs. Siddiqui. Good
Thank
evening,
you.
Board.
Thank you for being here this evening. We have prepared about 15 questions for you, and we have allotted 75 minutes for your interview, with the hope being that we'll get through the 15 questions in about 60 minutes, and allowing another 15 minutes in case you have any questions for us. Any questions for us before we get started?
Nope.
Okay, great. So I'll kick things off by just asking why you chose to apply for the superintendent position here in Webster.
That's Great question. So I have been in the district, in the Webster Public School District, working for 23 years. Prior to that, I was a mom, a parent volunteer, a substitute, and that's how I got my beginning here in Webster. I feel like that over the years, I've gained some real knowledge about how the operations of the district. I feel like I have a connection to the students and the staff. In Webster, I had a very similar upbringing to many of our students here in Webster. I was I'm one of 6 kids, second to the bottom, first one in my family to go to college. My parents were divorced. We lived with my dad, so we were in a single-family home. We got ourselves up and off to school many times on our own because my dad had to work, so he was up and out of the house at 6 o'clock, so we got ourselves up to high school and off to school. Some days not so successfully, where we had to meander our way to school and find a ride or walk. And, school was not a place that I truly loved to go. I was an average student. I wasn't a great student. But what I did love is I loved music and I loved sports. So that was a reason for me to attend school. And just, I feel like I can really relate to the students here in Webster. I have a passion about that. I've been very fortunate over the years to work for some wonderful people who care very deeply about the community, to the point that when you were here, you just couldn't help but to feel the same way. And as you get to know the people and the students, you realize how wonderful our kids and our staff really are. And I think that I am at a point in my career, after some hard thinking, that I can make a difference. I think I've built relationships. I think we have a lot of mutual respect with the staff. I think I know where we are at a district level. All the work that's been done over the past few years, and I think I am in the position to help us move forward to that next level, and I believe we can get there. So that's why I'm applying.
Thank you, Mrs. Perangeli.
Thank you.
The rest of the committee has questions. We're going to kind of just move around here.
No problem.
So I have the next one. Could you please describe the role of the superintendent as it relates to the development of district and school culture?
Yeah, it sets the tone. The superintendent's office sets the tone of the culture for the rest of the district. If you set a tone that's meant in collaboration and team building, fostering relationships, then that is going to go down to the building level, which will go down to the staff. I think it's very important to let people know that you lead in a safe environment, that their opinions matter, that you're listening. And it's a collaborative effort, and I think that sets the tone for everybody else. If you lead by example, it will follow everywhere else. So that's what I believe the superintendent of the school should do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm next.
All right.
How would you implement culturally proficient curricula across all subgroups?
Good question. So I think even in the development or the purchasing of curriculum, you should always start out with a team. That team should involve your curriculum director, your principals. You should have teachers on that team. You should have special educators on that team. And it takes time to evaluate curriculum to make sure that it's high quality, that it's culturally responsive, that when you look at the curriculum, students can see themselves within the curriculum. So I think that takes time. That process takes time. You need to work through the curriculum to see, not every curriculum checks every box, right? So you might need supplemental and curriculum that goes on top of it. So you just really want to know what that is before you dive in to make sure you're prepared. And then once you make that decision and you move forward and you've done it on a collaborative basis, you have buy-in from your teacher staff. So now it's time to move it to the next level and have professional development and give support throughout the schools so that the teachers feel comfortable implementing that curriculum. And I think that's where it really comes down to the classroom. I think anytime you implement anything, it's not a one and done shot. It's something that needs to keep going back. There needs to be a long-term plan for that. So it needs to continue. Your first year is getting comfortable. Your second year is really digging into the curriculum and making sure that you're doing high-quality Tier 1 instructional practices, and then you're using your Tier 2 and your Tier 3 supports and your interventions when necessary. But I think it has to be all-encompassing. You can't do one without the other. You can't just purchase curriculum and say, here you go. Ms. Siddiqui, you said the other day at a meeting, magic happens. Magic happens in the classroom. And that's true, it does happen in the classroom. But if you were given a magic kit right now and opened it up, would the magic happen? That takes time, it takes effort, it takes careful practice, it takes planning, it takes practicing in front of people, it takes knowing who your target audience is, which is changing all the time in a classroom. Your audience is constantly changing. You could have one classroom with multiple different levels of students, and you need to know how to engage all of them, differentiate your instruction. And that takes time, that takes hard work, and that takes a lot of reflection when you're looking at your practices. So that's how I would implement that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Perangeli, can you please describe for us 3 indicators that you will use to determine the degree to which you're being successful in this role?
That I will use?
Yes.
So I think, well, feedback, positive relationships, your culture with your staff, your parents, your teachers. I think if it's positive and you're getting feedback from your staff, then you know you're successful. I think you need student achievement is always an indicator of success and your progress in that, which is done by assessing and looking at your data. And then I think your community relations overall and your fiscal responsibility is a key indicator. You have to be able to support the programming, and you have to have relations with the community and the town offices in order to be successful every year. So I think if you can do that without a lot of infighting, with teamwork and together, we've been very successful over the past few years with our budgets, working collaboratively together. I think that speaks success to the district.
Thank you.
Good evening. How have you built lines of communication with the various district stakeholders, such as the leadership team, faculty, community leaders, and families within the community?
Sure. So I think by being a part of the community, mostly, I attend many events in town. You'll see me at a lot of different functions, school functions, town functions. I also attend, if you're looking at the town, as looking at those offices down there, I attend biweekly meetings, part of the financial team. I work with the retirement board. I will work with the town clerk. We have a very transparent, trusting relationship now. We've worked really hard at that over the years. And I think that's why we are so successful with the budget and the finances as we move forward. We're always collaborating, we're always communicating. We meet with the town administrator and the town treasurer to talk about that. I think that was part of the reason why we were able to get the building project move forward. I think there is a lot of respect. I think my dealings with stakeholders and families, I've had many dealings with families with transportation or other issues. I always listen. There's always 2 sides to every story. Many times they want to be heard or they want to be acknowledged, and we can come to a solution together. And I think that I've been very successful in that. I don't think in my time here you've had many complaints come to the school committee on behalf of us. So I find that that is an open line of communication. And I think, you know, we need to continue that. I think that as we move forward as a district, we really have to work on our community engagement across the board. Parents have to be able to know that they can trust us and that they can come to us and we're going to listen. And we have to work hard to build that relationship. You know, we've been working hard at inviting them in, but I think we're going to have to go out and meet them at different places. I think we've got to be creative in how we're doing those, working that. But that's how I believe I've built the lines of communication. It's very open, honest, transparent, and built on mutual respect and listening. I think listening is key.
Mrs. Perangeli, I have a kind of a two-part question, so I'm just going to ask you the first part first. So how would you foster meaningful, productive, and supportive relationships between staff, families, and students?
Sure. So I think those meaningful relationships are not just a 7-hour a day relationship. Those relationships start from the minute the student gets up and student gets on the bus in the morning, saying a good morning. Every year I speak with our transportation company and I talk with them about the importance of how it is to welcome a student in the morning. Because sometimes that good morning, that hi, how was your day, that hello, or any kind of communication can set the tone for the student's day. So I think that's important, that we acknowledge the students when they get up. I think that we need to do more follow-up, more outreach to foster those relationships with our families and our students. I think onboarding process is an opportunity missed for us when our students come in. They come in, we have central registration, they enroll here, but then what happens? They go back to the school. That's an opportunity where right away we could have our family engagement liaison working with those families, welcoming those families, and making sure that they have the supports that they need in place. So I think that's something we need to work on with our families. I also think that we need to be a little more outreach at our level, at the district offices. Every year when we're looking and we're starting off the school year, we ask our teachers to call and build relationships with our families, make that phone call. I think we should be doing that also. It doesn't take a lot of time for us to pick up the phone. We send surveys and we ask for feedback, but you're always getting the same surveys. You're reaching the same families over and over again. I think it would be great if, you know, maybe we know who our students are, we know who our families are that are enrolling. At the end of the week, you know, you take a half an hour and you pick up the phone and you call 5 families, welcome to Webster, I'm following up, how was your first couple of weeks? And that's just one step and start in building those relationships. And if we do that, and multiple people will do that, maybe these families will say, boy, they really care in Webster, maybe I want to go there, maybe I want to stop in and see that. They might not do it the first time, they might not do it at the second event, but if you keep going and you keep trying, eventually I think you're going to make headway. So I think that is how and those relationships even have to be two-way, even between our staff. Those open conversations, honest conversations with our staff, being approachable, being able to get their buy-in, include them. They want to be included. They want to be heard. They want to have a seat at the table. And we need to make sure that we're doing that in a collaborative manner. So that's how I would do that.
Thank you. So the second part, you really touched on already, but I wanted to give you an opportunity just to read this. What are the supports that you will develop and implement to make families an equal and informed partner with staff?
Yep. So I talked about a lot of those things, but I think we need to do more family engagement things in the school. Often, I think there should be something at least every month. It doesn't always have to be in every building, but I think we could do more within our schools. I also think we need to do more events as a district to pull families in to see the other exciting things that are going in. One of the ideas I had was I would love to see, and it might be a little more difficult with the construction now going on at the high school because you would need a bigger school to do it, but you know, maybe a science fair across the district where parents could see, you know, young kids' science projects and then all the way up to the high school, and you have a family dinner, you have something where you're supporting food, you have a buffet where people can sit, people can eat and gather, have discussion, teachers are there, and you have that building relationship that's not anything based on a parent-teacher conference or something like that, doing events. But I think you need to have that two-way. You need to communicate. You need to have your newsletters out. You need to keep parents informed, which is key. And I also think an important thing that we need to do in the district is I think we should look at having a family engagement committee across the district of multiple players to come up with different ideas on how we want to reach our families, because I still think there's a lot of work to be done in that area that we could improve on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello.
Hi, Mrs. Naparata.
What concrete steps would you take to bring us out of turnaround status? And how will you measure and report on the progress to stakeholders?
Sure. So I think we have started a lot of that hard work already. There are a lot of different, I look at it as buckets that kind of fall into place. And when you have all of those buckets in place, things will naturally progress. I mean, our ultimate goal is always the advancement and achievement of our students, but I think that needs to start with safe and supportive schools. You need to have a learning environment where students can come in and be successful. And I think that's key. And it can't just be, you know, a safe and supportive school is not just, here's a ticket for behaving. It needs to become part of the culture. We need to be supporting the students. There's an expectation and a behavior that comes in. And once that's ingrained and you have that environment, now you're open up to the learning. And the learning is having that high quality, culturally responsive curriculum, making sure that the curriculum is aligned with the standards and you're providing high quality instruction. And that's where your teachers come into play, focusing on that Tier 1 instruction and supporting them on that Tier 1 instruction. We need to provide them with the support that they need. They tell us often that they need supports and they need time for planning. They also need time for data assessment, because in order to succeed, they've got to be assessing the data, making sure, you know, when they finish a unit lesson, when they finish a lesson that they're assessing, did I hit all the target areas? Did I miss something? Do I need to reteach an area? Did somebody get, you know, part of it, not all of it? Where do I go to do that? And they need to support in that. So we need to be doing that. So assessment is key, and knowing where our students are at and what interventions they might need to succeed. And then I go back to another bucket, which is our family engagement. If we can engage our home and our parents and get them involved in the student learning, I think that that's just going to even bring us to the next level. We currently are. We have our curriculum. We have the resources. The work has started. Our teachers have been working so hard in the classrooms, and they are constantly asking for time and support. They're digging in. They're doing the work. We're starting to look at the data and letting that inform our instruction and working on that. So we have the pieces that we're moving in the right direction. I think if we can get our culture and get everybody engaged and on the same page and on the vision, I think you're going to see things really move in the right direction. I think we are getting there. We are very close to getting there. It's just going to take a little bit more to get us over the hump, and then you're going to start seeing some growth. But if you put all those pieces together, I think you will see growth. And you know, I just want to go on to say, a lot of people, I've heard this over and over, well, you're a transient population. People come in, people come out. You know, we get move-ins, move-outs all the time. But we can control what we're doing here in Webster. We can control our circle. We know what we need to do here. We know the instruction that we need to give. We know the things that we work on. The transient population is the outliers. If we are doing what we're supposed to be doing with our high-quality instruction inside, when we get those transients, then we can assess and place where they're needed to make sure we know the supports that were needed. But, you know, we know what we control. We control what's in our house, what's in our buildings. So that work we are doing, and we need to do it with fidelity. And that's the way we're going to keep going, and that's what's going to get us out of an underperforming status. Thank you.
Me again.
Oh, look at you,
I
back-to-back
know.
questions.
How would you ensure the district is providing adequate instruction, support, and intervention to our students and members of subgroups who fail to meet the learning standards?
Sure. Well, I think a lot of that is around assessment and data and understanding that we need to be accessing and looking at kids' work. So that means giving staff time to review the data. We need to make sure that we are holding everybody to the higher standard. We need to be evaluating our staff, giving positive feedback. We need to be receptive to feedback as employees. It's a two-way street, right? It doesn't have to be, an evaluation does not have to be a negative experience and should not be a negative experience. It's a time to reflect on our practices. We need to make sure that our scheduling is in place, that it's the best schedule possible, that gives us adequate time to make sure that our students are not getting pulled from any of that tier one. We need to hold that sacred, so they're not getting pulled from that. We need to make sure that we're giving equitable services to everybody and really taking a deep dive into the data to make sure that it's informing our instruction. Who needs that targeted intervention? Where are they getting it? And that's stuff that needs to be followed up. That can't just be a one and done. We have to continually do that. We should be doing that. We should be looking at district at a data level, and really letting that guide our focus. I mean, we do it in pockets, but we don't have a district data team where we're sitting down and looking at the district as a whole and saying, you know, these are the things that we need to work on. But I think at the school level, you know, you rely on your building principals to make sure that, you know, they're your instructional leaders, that they're getting in the classrooms, they're observing, and they're supporting the teachers and guiding the instruction. You're welcome. Thank you.
What is the role and value of assessment instruments in today's schools?
So, roles of assessment instruments. So I think they're very important. You have to be assessing all the time throughout the school year. You have to be looking at student data and making sure that you're on target or where you need to intervene to make sure that you're hitting the standards across. So I think they're very important in today's schools. It's all about being reflective of your practices and what you're doing, and making sure your assessments are aligned to your standards. That's very important. So if you're using the assessments and you're benchmarking and you're taking that data and you're using it to guide and inform your instruction, I think it's very important. I think your students, that's what's keeping you on task with your student and you're understanding what they need. I think we should also be looking at, you know, assessment to guide our budget, to guide the practices that we're doing in school. I mean, it's telling us a story. The data is telling us a story. There's not just one assessment. There's multiple assessments that you should be using. Like MCAS is one assessment that you use. iReady is another that you use. We also have Study Sync. We have Dibbles. You take all of those combined and you take a look at it and it tells you a story. And that's important because all those pieces don't lie. So you've got to follow the results and let that guide your instruction and guide your progress. So I think it's very important that we use assessment instruments in the schools.
Back to me.
Back to you.
Could you please describe your ability to cultivate a disciplined and safe school environment?
So, safe school environment. So, a safe school environment is clear expectations. You're asking about, can you repeat the question one more time? I want to make sure I heard it right.
Yeah, sure. Describe your ability to cultivate a disciplined, safe school environment.
Sure. So again, that is your PBIS, and that is your clear expectations. A safe school environment, you want to be able to come to school and feel safe. When you walk in, it should be clear. The expectation should be clear wherever you go in the school of what is a safe, productive school, where you can walk down the hallways. When you walk by a classroom and you hear noise, but it's productive noise, right? And your PBIS is supporting the behaviors. It's not just a ticket, but it's really getting to the root cause analysis of some of the behaviors that you have. You use your data, your educator's handbook, to drive and inform what the behaviors in your building. Are the behaviors worse on a Friday? Are they worse at 7 o'clock in the morning? Are they pockets of kids at a certain time? And when you can get to the root of those problems, fix those, your environment is going to be better. You're providing services, you're providing counseling services to those kids, you're providing coping mechanisms to those kids. So I think it's critical to the success of having a safe school environment. When you walk in and you feel that culture, that it's just a normal behavior, that's when you know you're successful. It's not something where you're almost bribing somebody or awarding somebody something to behave that, but it needs to breathe in the building. It needs to be in every room that you walk in. There needs to be signage, there needs to be support, there needs to be positive encouragement and kindness between the kids. So it's a culture. It lives and breathes every day. That's when you know you're successful in a safe school environment. And I believe, the teams that are working on that, we have PBIS teams across the district. They're all at different levels of where we are with that, but we are working to that. I think the expectations are clear, but I think you constantly have to revisit those expectations. Because if you're not reminding and you're not revisiting, again, it can't be a one and done. It needs to be lived every day in the building. Thank you.
How would you use student performance data to prioritize use of resources, including money, technology, and human capital?
Yep, budget stuff. So I think student performance data is great to inform budget. We do use data for budget. We look at the number of our students who need resources. We look at the number of students that maybe we have ELL, and that guides our discussion in our budget when we're looking at staffing and human capital. I think we also look at student data to perform, what kind of interventions do we need? What kind of curriculum do we need? That's another area where we're looking at student data. I think when we're looking at programming, we're looking at like Project Lead the Way to have a successful programming in a building. What does that look like? What are we going to need there? What kind of data do we need? How many kids do we have coming in? That's another form of data. We look at our grade level data. But I think student performance data is used to really tell you where your interventions and what kind of supports you need to guide your instruction in the buildings, and that will help you guide your budget when we sit down and talk. We just did that the other day. We were looking and talking about the needs, and it was actually one of the better budget meetings I sat in because it really came down to the academics in the building. And it wasn't just one person talking about their own building. They were talking about the other person's building and the needs of that. And, if you do this better, if your behavior or you're hitting that, when those kids come up, the expectation will be there. So there was a lot of collaborative discussion going on, and that was guiding how we were going with our budget in deciding that. So I think student performance data is always used to prioritize the resources that you need. And then I think there's a lot of other factors that come into play when you look at the numbers of special ed students you have, the number of ELL students have. You want to make sure you're in compliance. You want to make sure you're hitting all of those needs. And then that will guide your budget process.
Hello.
Hi, she's back.
Describe your philosophy surrounding the evaluation of direct reports and how you would mentor, guide, and support underperforming staff and inspire others to perform at a higher than current level.
Sure. So I believe in empowering my staff. I'd like to have a very safe and supportive environment. I like them to feel appreciated. Um, I believe that I always want them to feel like um, they can come to me with anything. If they make a mistake, it's not a big deal. I don't want to overreact to that because you learn by making mistakes. We all learn by making mistakes. I can give you an example. My new food service director, she's a young director. She's out of college. She didn't have that work experience, but she was young. She had a lot of knowledge. So when I interviewed her, I'm like, she knew her stuff. She didn't have the management experience, but she knew her stuff. I knew what I could help her. I knew what I could mentor her. So her very first day she came in, and, we started talking about the position, and I said, this is going to be a lot of work, right? And she's like, yep. And I said, I know you can do it. I believe in you, and I believe you can do it. I said, but you need to know you need to know that you can come to me for help, and you need to know when to ask questions. And I need to trust that you know that. I said, together we're a team. I can't be there every second. I have to trust in you that when you need support, you're going to come and tell me you need support. And together, we'll figure it out. I might not have all the answers. You might not have all the answers, but we're going to sit down and figure it out together. And it fosters that building of trust, of mutual respect. I know what I can teach you. I'm going to mentor you. And we have that relationship right from day one. Right off the bat. I spend time with her. She goes, works. I'm going to leave you alone for a while. You have questions, you come find me. As time goes on, she's becoming more independent, and she's growing, and she is the most confident director out there now. She, will hardly come in my office with questions, and when she does, she has a really good question. She said, I think I need to ask you this one. So it's that mutual respect, that mutual trust. And when you're empowering your staff and you're giving them the opportunity, they're naturally going to work harder. They're naturally going to lift up and grow. They want to do the work. And then the underperforming staff, you work with. I mean, you give opportunities, you do performance plans, you explain. It doesn't have to be a really bad experience. I have had to write performance staff. I have had to do that. It's been a collaborative effort. We sit down, we have discussions, we talk about the issues at hand. I guide and help. What do you need help with? Is it organization? Is it something else? What can we do together? Because I feel like I take it personal. I feel like if I'm not helping my staff succeed, then it's something that I'm not doing right, because I need to help them grow. It's my job to support them. So how can I teach you? How can I support you in a different way? And it's really that two-way street of communication. But I believe you have to empower your staff. And I believe if you do empower your staff, you trust in your staff, guide your staff, and they know that they can come to me and have honest discussions. They can come to you when you make a mistake, say, I made a mistake. Okay, well, that's all right. Let's fix it. What can we do together to fix it? I think that's how you grow the relationship, and that's really how it should, in my opinion, that's how it should be. They should feel supported.
How would you address turnover at the building administrator level?
How would I address that? Well, I think if you have a collaborative, open environment, then you don't have to worry about turnover. We've had a lot of turnover in the past, but I think our relationships now, if you just look at, we just had a very successful meeting where there was open communication between all of our administrators about budget discussion. I think when you have that safe environment and you have the ability to allow somebody to do the job and you're supporting them, I think that there is going to be a mutual respect back and you're not going to have that turnover. I think it's all about communication, working together, empowering, and letting them do their job. And I think we see that in the work we do all the time here that I've been part of. We did that in our Glee meeting the other day. We sat, we had a wonderful meeting, talked, listened to them talk. You know, it wasn't about me, it's about them empowering and having a voice, being able to listen to that voice. I think when you respect and you allow them to do their job, I think that you're going to not have the turnover. You're going to retain staff. I think that's how it is.
Who are you accountable to, and how will you hold yourself and others accountable for follow-through and outcomes?
Yeah, I am responsible to everybody. I'm responsible to students, I'm responsible to parents, I'm responsible to the community, responsible to the staff, I'm responsible to everyone, including the school committee. I hold myself accountable every day. There isn't a thing I don't do in my job now where I don't spend a dollar without thinking, is that how I would want my tax dollar spent? I don't answer a parent call without saying, if I was a parent, or putting myself in their shoes. So I think holding yourself accountable is critical, and I think we all need to hold ourselves accountable to a higher standard. I think it's imperative, and I think that's how you measure your accountability, by the success that you see when you're empowering your staff and you see the success in your staff. You know the work that you're doing is good. If you're not accountable and you're not reflective and you're not taking that feedback, then there's a problem. But I think I'm accountable to everybody that I work with, everybody in this community. I work for them, paid by taxpayer dollars. So, and I want to go back to the other question because I don't think I answered it.
Which question is that, Mrs. Pritchett?
Describe your philosophy surrounding evaluation. I don't think I talked about evaluation. I talked about mentoring. Did I not answer that?
If you have more that you'd like to add to that, by all means.
Yeah, well, I didn't really address the evaluation part of it.
Okay.
So I think evaluation is important. I don't think evaluation is a one and done. I think there should be nothing in evaluation that hasn't been discussed throughout the entire year. There should never be a surprise in evaluation. Evaluation is a tool, but it's ongoing throughout the year with the employee. Those are ongoing discussions that you should be having. So when you get to the evaluation of a direct report, that's just a summary of the year and talking about, it's not a surprise. That is a tool that you use to talk about what you did well, things that you can work on for growth. So I just wanted to make that clear because I don't think anything in an evaluation should ever be a surprise. Those are conversations that you should be having constantly with staff. So I just want to make that clear.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're actually nearing the end of our time here. So in closing, I just want to ask if there's anything coming in here this evening that you're hoping to get the chance to talk about that we didn't get to?
You asked some really great questions, so thank you for those. And I just think that, we are really in a critical point here in Webster. I think that we have a lot of great things going for us. I think we have some wonderful staff. And I think I have spent 23 years of building great relationships and mutual respect with people. I think leading this district is going to be a lot of work, and it's a lot of hard work. But I think it's great work, and I think it's rewarding work. I would hope that over the course of the last few weeks that you've heard, I didn't really even talk about my relationship with unions tonight. I think that I have built relationships with every union there is in the district, a collaborative relationship. One of the things that I like most about our unions, and one of the processes I like in negotiation, is the interface bargaining. I enjoy that process. I like it because I think it's based on, it really forces you to communicate with the union. It really builds that relationship and helps. It's not about just, this is what I want. There's a reason behind it, and it forces you to communicate and understand where they're coming from and where you're coming from. So I appreciate that, building those relationships. I think that we have wonderful people here, and we are on the right track. And I think we are very close to turning that corner. I think there's still work to do, but I think we are there. And I just would love the opportunity to get us to the end, that hump, but that's for sure.
Thank you, Mrs. Perangeli.
Thank you.
Anything else on your mind?
No, other than a building project, we are excited to get off the ground here and pass this. I think we're going to be going places. Excited. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for your time. We appreciate your interest, and we'll be in touch with you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Have a nice rest of your evening. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Lori, would you please poll the committee?
Yes.
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 Yes, meeting adjourned. Good night, everyone.